Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Thoughts. And today we are talking about Ascendance of a Bookworm, Episode 4, Forests and Clay Tablets. But before we begin, I want to give a big shout out to my boy at Nacho Gashardo for sharing last week's video over on Twitter, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Bookworm video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Now with that said, we have a very interesting episode this week. I was sort of struggling on how I felt because there's things that I loved about this week's episode and then things that I was like, oh, I would have done that differently, but it's still a good episode. And I don't even know where to start, honestly. This episode felt like both the culmination of a lot of things for mine and also the progression towards something new. As we see Mine finally achieve one of her big goals, although ever so briefly. That being that Mine actually does manage to, quote-unquote, get a book in this week's episode of the show, but it's sort of kinda true, also sorta kinda not. You see, Mine's whole goal was to work her way up to getting strong enough to actually go out into the forest. As you guys may remember from last week, her goal was to make clay tablets. She wants to be able to write a book using clay tablets, which, by the way, would be a feat and a half. The amount of clay you would genuinely need for that is outrageous, and they're just digging this stuff out of the dirt, so give them kudos, that is impressive. But it's just sort of, I don't know if I should say sweet, but it's encouraging and endearing to see Mine work herself so hard just to get to this goal. But it's not something that she does alone, because I gotta say, I was very much not about this when it first showed up in the show. I liked the character, but I was not about where they were heading with the relationship. But the more I see from it, the more I'm pretty much like, you know what? Yeah, I can kind of see it. And that is the relationship between Mine and Lutz. I still think it's weird, because Mine is very clearly an adult of some kind. And the fact that, like, I know she's in a kid's body, I get it, but Lutz is like 5. So it's weird. But I wouldn't be against it if they were both older. And what I would actually like to see from the show, and again, it's one of the reasons why I said that I feel like this episode was a lot of setting up potential plot lines. And that's because I do feel as though the conversation between Lutz and Mine leads itself nicely into what could be a future arc of the two in a much older age traveling together. Because Lutz's goal in life is to be a traveling merchant. He wants to see other cities and explore and go on a big adventure. Like, that's what he wants to do with his life. And we discover this when he's trying to help Mine with what she wants to do, which is live a life surrounded by books, essentially be a traveling librarian of sorts. And so they both want to travel. And Mine encourages Lutz to follow his heart and do what he wants to do, and Lutz says that he'll always be there for her no matter what. I would love to see that expanded on and have Mine actually travel with Lutz to see possible different libraries across the isekai world that they're in. Again, the dynamic is weird, but it's also sort of endearing and sweet, and I just like that these two characters look out for each other, especially Lutz, who is very patient and very... He's strict in a way with Mine, because he does scold her for being like, you told Gunther, like, you told your dad that you weren't going to overexert yourself, and yet when I turn my back for 5 seconds, you're digging up dirt for some reason. Meanwhile, we know what it's for, but he doesn't know that. So Lutz is obviously sort of dismayed, because he's like, and you brought a shovel with you. You lied to your dad, and in turn, you lied to me. Like, you should trust me. I can't believe you'd be so untrustworthy. And when he said that, my heart sank, because I was like, man, like... I know that Lutz cares so much about Mine, and at this point, Mine has grown to care a great deal for Lutz. So hearing that legitimately broke my heart for a second. And his level of patience and accepting of Mine's sort of erratic behavior is so encouraging for what could be a future dynamic down the line. I do think their dynamic now is fine. but I wouldn't mind seeing them like getting older and like I'm not saying they get together, but maybe like the flirtationship can actually begin once they're old enough to have one. So yeah, I don't know. I genuinely was so it was just wholesome seeing these two characters interact, and I don't know. I just thought it was friggin' really sweet, and I would love to see a future arc with them traveling together as like older characters. Like imagine what these two would look like older and then traveling, going on a crazy adventure in an isekai world. Now, speaking of the isekai world, by the way, I was so sure when we got to the forest, I was like, I wonder if we're gonna see any creatures. I wonder if we're gonna see any monsters. But why would we? Because these are kids, you know? Like, why would there be monsters in a world with, like why would the kids be traveling to a forest where there's monsters? Even if maybe this is an isekai world, I just couldn't imagine that the parents would be cool with them going into a forest that had the potential for danger. So I was pretty much resigning myself to the fact that I'm like, yeah, the first like maybe 6 plus episodes, maybe maybe we'll only actually get to see something remotely sort of magical or like some sort of mysterious ability or like creature down the line, like maybe like more than halfway through the show. Spoilers, that's not at all what happens. As it turns out, in one of the biggest shock turn twists ever, not ever, but like this moment genuinely shook me. Mine is magic of some, like she has some latent magical abilities of some kind. It was trippy. I should say that the reason why this happens is because Faye and his friend are the biggest idiots of all time. I could not believe Faye. Faye, you were one of my boys. I can't believe you would be so dumb. I was so like, Faye, what are you doing? If you don't know what I'm talking about, you haven't seen the episode. First of all, don't watch these videos if you haven't actually watched the episode. These are not a replacement for watching an episode of a show. But Faye and his friends stomp on the tablets, and not out of malice. They just see tablets and they're like, oh, like the one kid jumps on them, and obviously mine couldn't even fathom why they would do that, so she didn't like shout at them, don't, because she couldn't even process what was happening after all that work. And Faye and his friend just stomp on them, and mine basically goes Super Saiyan for like half a second. Not like literally, but I mean like she really like she turns into Gohan, teen Gohan, although he's not really a teen. That's a whole topic for another video. But like he goes Cell Games Gohan, right? Where she starts going like, I can't believe I'm never gonna forgive you for this. And you see like this aura, and her eyes like change into this freaky, just like myriad of colors, and like this aura shows up around her, and it's not for show because the other characters react to it the same way that we're reacting to it. They're like, mine, it's cool, everything's cool. What the heck is going on? Like the kids see it too. Now, I'm assuming the kids don't tell the parents because it never comes up, but I have to believe at some point that's gonna come back up again. Turi's gonna be like, mine is magic, apparently? Like, maybe this is gonna come up at the baptism, since we did see that in next week's episode, Turi's baptism is gonna be next week. So I'm assuming maybe there, since the high priest is apparently like the one who could potentially baptize Turi. Like, he may show up, he may not. I hope he does, because I've been waiting for this character for 4 episodes now. Well, 3 episodes, because we technically saw him in episode 1, but whatever. So I don't know, that's a lot to process. The other thing in this episode that I should point out as being like something that I was like, yes, that's amazing, was Gunther and I always forget the mom's name, but the mom and the dad basically coming to terms with the fact that mine's a little bit odd, but she wants to write books. And so while they don't really have connections to get her into an apprenticeship that can actually help her with that, Gunther does happen to know Otto. Now, mine isn't of age to technically be an apprentice, so it's against their laws to actually have her work with Otto, but Otto needs the help, so he's just going to say that he's teaching her to learn to read and write, and she'll be helping him with a lot of the number crunching on the side, since mine's very good at it. So that, I thought, was stupendous, because it's such a growth moment for Gunther as a character. I love Gunther so much. Like, seeing him go from, like, I don't want you being with Otto because that makes me jealous. Like, I get dad jealous, like because you're treating him like a dad. I'm your dad, dang it. but it's just what Mine wants to do. And as much as she loves Gunther, like, she cares about, well, maybe not love, but cares about Gunther, and Gunther loves her, right? Because they don't know that that's not technically their kid. But I'm assuming at this point, Mine does sort of look at her mom and her dad in this world as, like, surrogate mom and dad. And so there's a good amount of bond there is what I'm trying to say. But, you know, just Otto happens to have the tools that she needs in order to learn how to read and write. And Gunther is finally at a point where he's accepting of that. I thought Gunther's growth in that scene was fantastic. However, that scene also brings up 2 points in the episode, and sort of, I guess, kind of a third that I was like, ooh, I wouldn't have done that. Or, ooh, I would have changed that. And that is that okay, so when the characters are, like, set out a goal, right? Gunther's like, okay, so you need to get into better health in order for me to let you go to the forest because I don't want something to happen to you. And of course, even as an audience member, you're like, yeah, of course, yeah. But the way the passage of time is treated is just, you see Mine work up to something, and then she says, and then I got sick, but then I got better. And I'm like, okay, well, just show you getting sick, and then we can cut to you getting better later. Like, it was just, like, the way that it was structured, because that happens twice in the episode, and both times I'm like, the way that was structured is odd. I'm not a big, like the narrative structure was a little bit off in this week's episode. Like, just the passage of time was strange. Since it's established that 3 months pass in between Mine getting ready to go to the forest, and it really doesn't feel like it. And it's sort of jarring in a way. And the other thing that's a little bit jarring is the eyes in this week's episode. I feel like maybe the art was neglected a little bit in this week's episode, since a lot of the characters' designs look a little bit weird, almost kind of jarring, because, like, just the way that they're drawn, the eyes are very big and, like, not quite looking in the direction of the characters speaking. So it's a little, like, just a little hiccup in the art that sort of got me, pulled me out of it a little bit. And the only other thing about the episode that sort of rubbed me the wrong way was I really just wanted Mine to keep the tablets after all the work that went into them. So the fact that they exploded was a little bit sort of, and that's how the episode ends too. You're like, oh man, after all that, like, that kind of, that I was like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I would just let her keep the tablets. But that's just me. But with that said, everybody, that's basically going to wrap up all my thoughts. If you couldn't tell, I really dug it. I'm going to go ahead and put this episode in the B tier. It is a good, fun time. I'm continuing to really dig this show. On that note, everybody, that just about wraps everything up. But before we go, as always, I want to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier: Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Omner Garamond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and hey, if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get for as little as $1 a month, and get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But on that note, everybody, that's going to be a video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated. And if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.